Well, it's been cloudy and rainy all day, but thus far, no rain. At least none that I've seen. Apparently it rained or thundered or something earlier because they kept the kids inside for recess today, which I think was totally bogus. I mean, when I looked outside, it was clear and blue and it was cloudy, but the sky was still blue, and you could see the sun was coming through it. So, I don't know. I'm not in charge of making that decision. That's somebody else's call. And that leads us to this afternoon's topic of discussion. Authority and making decisions. It's not going to be too different from a recent topic about respect, but positions of authority are often, it's a double-edged sword, I'm going to say, because everybody wants to say that they want to make the decisions or make their own decisions, but nobody wants to actually sign up to be in charge when the time comes. So, I don't know. Is that a double-edged sword? Is that what that phrase means? I don't know. Basically, like for example, in my job at school, we have a hierarchy of authority. We have our superintendent, who is in charge of the entire district, all 3 buildings, K through 12. Then we have the assistant superintendent, who I don't really know what his job description is, but he is like the next step up. I guess he kind of oversees the workings of the buildings, if I had to put a job to it, like put a description to it. So there's like the paperwork side and the actual doing things side. I think that's kind of the difference in job descriptions there. And then we have at each building level a principal and an assistant principal, which I also don't think is totally necessary. I mean, I think there's too many administrators for the enrollment that we have. I mean, between our 3 buildings, we have, well, let's see, 900, about 1,300 kids, K through 12. I mean, just over maybe 100 kids per grade level. So for 1,300 people to have 6 building administrators and 2 district administrators, that's 8 people. That, I mean, you're shelling out a ton in salaries for those alone. And, I mean, I don't want to see anybody lose their job, but when school budgets are an issue that are very prominent in the government right now, it starts to call into question whether some of those positions are actually needed. But that's beside the point. The point is, there are people in those positions, and they are there because they were hired for those positions. And again, whether I agree with what they say or decide or not, it is my job to respect that decision and follow through on anything I'm asked to do or prepare or say. That being said, almost everybody in our building, and I can only speak for our building because I've not been involved in discussions at the others, has the idea that what they would like to do is better than what the administrators would like to do. Or the way they would run things is different than the way the administrators would run things. Sorry for that. I just purchased a gently used Power Wheels car for Ellie, and it's rolling around in the back of the car. So every time I accelerate, it goes to the back, and every time I brake, it makes its way to the front and knocks into the back of my seat. So that's annoying. But administration and authority is put in place because that is a hired position. If it wasn't, then everybody would be fighting over what decision should be made, and nothing would get done. The problem lies when the administration or the authority figure or the boss, however you want to put it, wants to try to please so many people, or starts to pick favorites, and the decisions are inconsistent. So it's like, oh, well, we'll do this way this time, but the next time it might be a little bit different because of such and such thing. And I get it. It's not an easy job. You can't please everybody, and you want to try to. But it's not something that's impossible. So when someone in a position of authority makes a decision, it's up to the underlings to follow and adhere to that decision. Not because they want to or because they like it, but because the authority figure decided. And everybody at some point or the other has either said or thought, man, I wish somebody would just make a decision and that would be the rule, so it would be consistent. And that's a great idea in theory, but when it actually comes time to do that, if that decision doesn't match up with what you had in mind, then you're no longer the person that was saying that. That's what gets annoying too. When people are not pleased simply because it didn't go their way. It's like, okay, you wanted it. You said, I want somebody to make a decision and tell me what to do. But then when that happened and it wasn't what you had in mind, you get upset about it. That's not fair either. Then the other side of things is nobody actually wants to step up. So, hey, we're looking for a leader of such and such committee, or this group needs a facilitator, or whatever. And nobody wants to step up into that position because it would add to their workload. It would put them out. It would cause them more stress. And then nothing gets done because that group has to disband, or that committee can't form because nobody wants to be in charge of it. And if you don't have a leader, then there's no point in having the committee, because then it's just a smaller group of the same thing you have going on now. So, I guess the lesson here is, whether you agree with the authority figure or not, you need to accept the fact that they are the authority figure. And if a position or something comes available and it could put you in a position of power to make the changes you want to make, then take it. Don't back away from it just because it has a higher title and people might ask questions of you or ask you to do something. But step into that role and make the changes you want to make, because now you're the authority figure. And yes, while you might catch some backlash from some people who don't like what you said or done, you're the authority figure at that point, and you get to make the changes. When the time comes for them to step in, they have the right to do that as well. So that's where, there are some things that led up to this thought process that I found out about today that I'm less than happy about, but nonetheless, it is what it is. So I'm not going to go into any details on that because it's not important. See you in the morning.